Welcome to Lafter Divorce Podcast, episode 87. I am your host, Leanne Linsky.
And I'm the boyfriend.
Welcome back to another wonderful week of
Divorce.
Woo!
They just keep rolling in, and they're always
good. Yeah, wonderful.
They're wonderful.
Yes. I just wanted to throw you off. Hey, while you're out there tuning in, make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. Unless, of course, you're driving, because then that's dangerous. Don't do that. But as long as you're somewhere safe and you're tuning in, make sure you also check out the website at lafterdivorce.com and check out our online store. We have lighthearted and handcrafted divorce-themed candles, all natural and aromatherapy, like just for you. So
with essential oils and a bunch of different scents. They're fantastic.
They are. You want to check them out. Hey, by the way, it's October already and holidays are right around the corner. So you want to get on that.
Hint.
Check it out now. Okay. All right. So if you're also on the website checking that out, why not go on and schedule your free life coaching session with me? That's right. One free session per person, and you get a full coaching session. Don't miss out on your chance. Do it. And you know what? Again, the holidays are coming up, so why not gift that to somebody? It's better than a coupon.
Yeah, it actually is. I've seen
Right?
the wonderful work you've done. So this is, yeah.
See, he's a keeper, you guys. All right. And an endorsement. So today, boyfriend, relationships and keeping them and sticking around. Not always easy to do, is it?
No.
It's
no,
not.
they can be difficult. Yeah.
They can be difficult. And you have never been married, and we've kind of talked before. You haven't gone to counseling or anything through any of your relationships.
Not because of them.
Right.
Or, well, no, hold on. Not to save them.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe to recover from them.
Recovering from them, but not to save them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I think back of when I was going through my divorce. I talked to friends and I talked to marital counselors or a marital counselor, same one both times. She was happy to see me come back. And
Cha-ching.
yeah, I even went and spoke to somebody at my church, and I'm not a religious person, but when you're going through tough times like that, you really start reaching out for answers, trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah. You want someone professional, someone who's empathetic, someone who's trying to solve a problem, trying to help you through this problem. Not solve it, but trying to help you through the problem.
Yeah.
Or the issues. So yeah, you reach out to anybody.
Right. And that's actually how I found my marital counselor, was through the church, is their recommendation. And she was great. And it was interesting though, because it happened to be a woman, obviously. And when my husband came to that session with me, he was very uncomfortable. He walked out. So
I could see that. Because then now you feel like you're getting ganged up on.
Because there's two women in the room.
Yeah. But I would imagine a woman would feel the same way, right?
Probably.
Yeah, if there are two men in the room.
If there are two men in the room, I wouldn't feel that he would totally understand what I was experiencing or where I was coming from.
Right.
And so I can see that. And, when we talk to other people, we've talked to other guests on the podcast about counseling and stuff, and it's hard to find just the right person.
Because you have to find the right fit. And I know that sounds very cliche, but if you can't find the right personality to help that works with your personality and your partner's personality, it's not going to work.
Right.
You're not going to be successful in those sessions.
Correct. Because you're going to close up and shut down. So I'm wondering, outside of therapy, that's one thing that's like the go-to. That's probably very most popular. There's also the church, which a lot of people, or synagogue, or whatever religion or spiritual beliefs that you have, maybe you go to that specific community to, help people guide you through a process. But the rub on that is, if one of you is one faith and the other is another faith, where do you go? I don't know. And then what are your other options? Are those the only two options out there besides getting into a mediator or something like that?
Well, once you get to a mediator, then it's what, almost done, right?
Then you're basically separating everything out, right? So I don't, I think back to when I was going through this, the only other people that were really around to talk to would be family or friends.
Right. And that's something you normally don't want to get into. You don't want to be airing your dirty laundry per se to your family and friends, do you?
And depending on what kind of situation your friends are in, I mean, if you're a young couple and most of your friends are single, they're probably not going to encourage you to stick around, right?
Yeah. So what other options are there?
Well, I'm glad you asked, boyfriend, because this week I happen to have the pleasure of talking to not one, but two people who offer coaching for couples. But get this, they do it together. It's a husband and wife team, and they coach couples together in the same room at the same time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you get another couple who are coaching you as a couple to get through this?
Yes. So
that seems smart.
Right?
Yeah.
And how awesome, because they're also not therapists. So there are a lot of people who are like, I don't believe in that. I'm not going to a therapist or something like that. There are other people who are like, I'm not religious at all, and I wouldn't go to that. What an awesome option to go and get people who are a couple, right? So they get it. And there's, one of each. So like you don't feel ganged up upon.
And once you tell her their story, they've been through this, so they have their own experience to try to. It's an impressive
dynamic.
Yes, exactly.
Because not you think about it. Well, why not go to what am I going to do with a couple? Like I think about like my parents. They've had a great marriage. They've been married forever. Hard for them to understand my experience of going through divorce or being in those situations. Not that they wouldn't be there for me or hadn't been, but they don't see the same kind of thing. But what I love about this coaching team is they've gone through all of this, and they're going to share the story. So I'm not going to repeat it all, but it was just wow. Hearing what they've gone through and then what they've turned it around into is remarkable. So boyfriend, before I go into the full formal introduction of our guest today, I want to alert you guys now, everybody, all of our listeners, that this is a really, really great conversation that I've had with our guest today. And I'm really excited about it because they have made an extremely generous offer. So in this episode, they're going to make an offer at the end, and all the details I'm going to include in the show notes so that you can see it on iTunes, where it has a description of where the show is. If you don't see it there, go to our website at lifelafterdivorce.com, and I will put a box on our front page with the details and how to contact them, because they're making a phenomenal offer. So if you're in a relationship and this hits home with you, you're going to want to reach out. So that said, let me go and tell you about our guest today. After dating for nearly 9 years and then being married for almost 7, Joel and Julie Landi were planning their divorce. Born and raised in New York, the two are highly driven high school sweethearts who everyone thought were the perfect couple. They were two very strong-willed individuals that set out to see their dreams come true with the attitude of win at all cost, and their mantra, you help me achieve my dreams and I'll help you achieve yours, not realizing what that would cost them. Joel, an aerospace physiologist and officer in the U.S. Navy at the time of their pending divorce, was planning to move on base and pursue his dream career, while Julie, a marketing professional, was going to keep their home in San Clemente and pursue hers. After many efforts with therapy, religious organizations, and personal development and communication workshops, they had decided it was time to call it quits. So, in an attempt to clean the closet, they agreed to go through one last conflict resolution process offered through a church and attempt to settle the dispute outside of the lawyer's offices and end things amicably and less expensively. To their surprise, the tough face-to-face time of truth-telling and vulnerable conversation opened up space for Joel to ask Julie if she wanted to start over. And after going on a, quote, first date again, they decided to rebuild, and they spent the next 17 years rebuilding their marriage and helping others to do the same all around the world with their church. In 2013, they decided to begin their own conflict resolution company, and the Performance Group was born. They currently enjoy helping couples from around the world, and their new mantra is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So without further ado, Julie and Joel Landi. Joel and Julie, welcome to Lafter Divorce Podcast.
Great to be here.
Thanks, Leanne. So fun.
Yes, excited to have you here. I really am curious to learn about both of you and how you came together. And what I want to start out with, if it's okay with you, is to find out a little bit about what you guys do and how you do it. So I guess that might be a fun place to start.
Awesome.
That's a great place to start.
Excellent. Fill us in.
Okay, great. Well, since my wife is the rock star in the couple, I'm going to let her talk about her.
So far, I like this already because you're like giving the accolades to your wife right off the bat. So, Joe, you're earning points.
Yeah, for sure. No, he's a sweetheart. I am very blessed woman, but we are, we have a parent company called the Performance Group, and one of the divisions of our company is called Power Couples. And we help very driven couples who are driving each other apart come back together and find a way to really work together, empower each other, and bring out the best in each other so they really can see something incredible on the other side. And we've worked with couples that are right at the brink of divorce. We are right before they hit the attorney's office when therapists tell them there's no way, leave, flee, run for your life. We are really turnaround specialists for sure. And we like to call ourselves the third option in that if they're not interested in, if they really don't want to go down the route of the attorneys and they really don't want to go down the route of therapy, or they really, actually, we're like the fourth option, they really don't want to go down the route of religion, we are the place to go. So
Nice. Yeah. So how do you, okay, so if someone has already been to therapy, they're already ready and agreed that divorce is their only way to get out of this situation, what do you do? Like, is this magic? I'm curious. Yes.
Leanne, that's a funny question because we tell people there is science in it and then there's art. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of funny. It's the intersection of both. Science in that, we have learned a lot about the brain and we understand hormones and chemistry. Like we understand, and science has been teaching us for decades, ideas about the limbic brain, the prefrontal cortex. Like we know there's a right time to say difficult things. And so we tell people like when they're like, hey, can you help us? And what does that mean? And how do you do it? Our response is there's science and there's art. The science is there's a rigid set of ideas. We're not rigid in them, but there are laws like gravity. When you apply them to any problem, they work. The art is when and how to apply those things in issues that are often always hotly charged, highly emotional, and you've got two people that see the same thing from two very, very different places. And so as much as we want to tell people, look, we'd love to, share a set of ideas with you and wave a magic wand, we know that these ideas really do work. But the fact that you're dealing with conscience, you're dealing with heart, you're dealing with people who feel betrayed, so these are delicate matters. And so there's art, there's knowing when to push, when to pull, and that comes in time. And Julie and I have been confident. We've helped thousands of couples, and we don't shy away from saying that, but we literally have helped thousands of couples over 2.5 decades. And so we've developed a deep bench. And as Malcolm Gladwell will say, we've got our 10,000 hours of really dealing with people in very, very charged, painful areas. But we've been very fortunate to have extraordinary results.
That's incredible. 10,000 hours. Yeah, that's a lot of hours, which makes you an expert in the field, if I recall correctly. And thousands of couples. I mean, so So when people come to you and you have a science, where do you start with this? Like you say, there's two parts.
Yeah. Well, the starting point, of course, is the story and the backstory, and everybody needs to have a space where they can tell their story. And so, when we get together, we give our clients a series of exercises and assessments that allow them to explain to us, where they've come from and where they're at, and why, in their words, why have you hired us? And so, the starting point is just kind of understanding, of course, their perspective. And then once we begin to understand their perspective, we begin to ask questions, and in a relatively short amount of time, we begin to uncover things like there are just gaps, or there are beliefs, or there are ideas that often people hold that are, although they're true to themselves, they're not necessarily empirically true, meaning they're not, sometimes they go against what other people would say would be logic. And so there are just things that we walk them through in terms of in a sequence of ideas, and we help them find a clarity by untangling difficult issues. And I think that's one of the greatest value adds, really, is getting in the middle of often highly charged issues, asking the right questions, providing the space, providing the rhythm for people to come out from underneath these very painful thoughts and experiences, and help them find a way forward by reframing what had happened and putting it in a positive, perfect future tense.
Right. So is this, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that, Leanne, just because one of the unique abilities that Joel and I have is obviously not only doing it for so long, but we do it as a couple. Like that the situation is so often that you'll go to a therapist or which is often helpful, but you'll pick a therapist that's either a man or a woman, or, a spiritual leader that's either a man or a woman. And one part of the couple will feel either not heard, ganged up on, whatever. There's already a barrier to that. So we have found that by working together as a couple with a couple, we really lower the defense mechanisms. People tend to feel heard. Like the male partner will hear things from me, or the female partner will hear things from Joel that they wouldn't ordinarily hear. And the female partner will feel safer with me, perhaps, than with Joel. And the male to him, they feel understood. And so there's an incredibly added benefit. It's like having two listening ears from both perspectives. You're going to hit. And I think that's one of the reasons we have such a high success rate with being able to untangle, as Joel said, some of these really difficult issues, everything from, you name it, from betrayal in terms of infidelities or, abuse, or you name it, just really, really difficult situations that have turned around. We have couples that have turned their lives around enormously, because I think they have felt safe enough, heard enough, and then given the tools to go forward.
Yeah, that's a big deal, because we walk in and we instantly feel represented, right? Yeah. And I haven't really heard of anybody going to any sort of, now, do you classify this as counseling?
It's really more traditionally what we would call coaching. So the difference between counseling / therapy and coaching, and these are well-embraced definitions, and this is a working definition that Julie and I use, is that a lot of times in therapy, you look backwards, you look at your family of origin, you begin to try to, trace some points in your past narrative, and you begin to try to understand the dysfunction, and you are working with basically, origins of problem. In a little bit different with coaching and consulting, and specifically with coaching. Coaching is, in fact, we're having a couple come over tonight. We did an immersive exercise with them a couple of months ago, and it's round 2 of what we did, which we can explain the immersion concept later in the podcast. But basically, it's round 2 of what do you want for yourself and for each other as a couple in the future. And so, the coaching element is more of getting people to be courageous enough to articulate if this is what I would want in a future relationship, in a marriage, in an ideal monogamous relationship, this is what it looks like. This is what it sounds, feels, smell, tastes like. Okay. And then where Julie and I come into the picture is, okay, then we're going to reverse engineer that. And we're going to put all of the values, beliefs, all the expectations, all the guardrails, whatever it takes to get to that goal. That's what we want to help you guys build. And oh yeah, by the way, along the way, are we going to visit some of these dysfunctions? Are you going to hear maybe certain terminologies that you might be familiar with? Yes, but we're not counseling. We don't look for problems. We look for a future and we build it.
Love it. Right. So this is much different approach. Also different in the fact that you're both present, right?
Yes.
And how many other people do something even similar to this that were both people that, done by a couple, the coaching partnership?
We don't know. And just to go back to, the whole concept of counseling and psychology, in no way do we ever undermine or ever diminish the power of that discipline. And we also, there's been times where we told people, look, what you're describing, you probably actually do need some type of, some type of therapy. Mm-hmm. So we work with a certain demographic of people. We work with people that, let me just take the gloves off. They're angry, they're hurt, they're successful, they're driven, they're convinced of what they know, they're frustrated, they're cynical, they don't want to be taken advantage of, they don't want their time wasted. And a lot of the people that we work with, they've done therapy, and although they've seen the value in it, they don't want to do it again.
Right.
So that's where we come in as the alternative.
I love it. And I like how you said it's forward thinking. It's where do we go from here, which is super important to acknowledge. And so once these people come to you and they get both of you in the room, how does that work as they're sharing their stories and they come in angry with all of those emotions? I mean, is that scary at times? How do you prepare for something like that?
No, it's not.
Good question.
It's not scary at all. We're used to it. And because, I think at the end of the day, Julie and I we like people. Yeah. We have a story. We were really wounded, very hurt, really hurt each other. We're unfaithful to each other. But we went the road less traveled. And we went down for probably a 14-day period, a walk that not many people go through, but we really took a hard, deep examination of ourselves. And instead of blaming each other, we really took responsibility and we healed a very, very badly damaged marriage. And so we understand anger and tears and rage and bitterness. We understand all those emotions in that room. And so we're not at all put off by them because that's what happens when people get hurt and they can't get out of being hurt.
Yeah. So I'm guessing maybe the first few sessions are a little bit more intense until you move past each person getting to tell their version of the story.
It's, Leanne, it's different for each couple. Mm-hmm. People come in differently. It's not uncommon that one person is further ahead, that, they're the person that's in all the self-help books. They do the meditation, they go to yoga. The other person's just grinding away at work, trying to figure out how to make life work in a different direction. And so people come in differently, they leave differently. But the power, Julie mentioned something earlier about, as a couple, we have certain teaching tools, and we have a bunch of them. And a lot of them are industry standard tools. Some of them are unique to our company and they're proprietary. But, for instance, most people understand the graphic. There's a picture of an elephant with 5 blind men. And, each blind man is touching the elephant in a different place. And of course, the whole element or the whole concept of that tool and teaching is in a lesson in life, which is if you ask each person to describe that elephant, they each has a different impression and a different experience of that elephant, but they're all correct.
Right.
Now, the power in the room at that moment is when you have two people like Julie and I who are in a very good place, who are very settled and centered in our emotions, being able to challenge people when they think they have all 5 positions on the elephant nailed. And that's the challenge when you're hurt, is you think that you have every, you become so sure of yourself when the reality is you've got to find the humility to say, you know what, this is my reality. This is my truth. But there are gaps in this story that I do not yet understand and I need help seeing.
I think the essence of that story is that those 5 blind men are absolutely correct, but they're incompletely correct in that there's a lot more to the story that needs to be heard and needs to be learned. And that's where we help people. That's the additional facets or viewpoints that we give people, is that they are a lot of times very right in and that's why they're where they are.
Yep.
They're solid people, but they're very right and very convinced of what they know, as Joel mentioned. But we help them realize that what they know is incomplete. It's not wrong. It's not inaccurate, but it's incomplete. And there's more to the story. And that opens a whole floodgate of possibilities.
Yeah. And imagine being in that room, Leanne, where at that moment, again, because now it's not 2 people arguing, but you've got 4 people in a room, and you've got 2 people saying, look, because when people are expressing their pain and their position, they want to be affirmed. Imagine the power when you say to a person in that moment, what you're saying is true, but it's not completely true. Meaning there are other elements of this storyline that we have to allow to be put into that truth.
Yeah. That's a fantastic visual and example of the 5 blind men with an elephant, because you're absolutely right. Their truth is true, but it's not complete. There's definite gaps. And what a great visual, because that's exactly what's happening with couples. They're only seeing their sides of it. So once you get through this and they start having those aha moments, like, oh my gosh, like I didn't consider all of these other possibilities of other things that were happening at the same time or in this same story. Where do they go from there? How do you start setting up what they want?
Well, once we believe that they're moving out of this stalemate where they're angry and they're stuck, we do move them down a continuum of reconciliation. Yeah. And we show them that, look, here's what's possible for a couple. These are levels of forgiveness. You mentioned something, I don't know if it's before we went live, but, hardship is tough. But when you learn from something that really, really wounds you, then, it's like when people are telling a story in a public speaking, you can tell when someone's telling their story and it's hard what they're saying from their past, but there's a twinkle in their eye and there's a small smile on their face because they've learned what they needed to learn from that bad experience, and they're stronger. And that's where we want to move people to. We want to get them to that place of where they actually, what we would even call in a biblical context, it would be wisdom. What was the wisdom in that experience? And bring forward so that you're stronger and better for your future.
We do really, as Joel mentioned, go through the continuum of reconciliation. So literally, with each piece, we have them list out what each issue is that they have a problem with, what the dynamic, a circumstance, a situation, an action, a way, whatever it is within their, relationship. And so we will literally work through each and every issue to find reconciliation, to bring forgiveness, and to learn the lesson so that they literally do come out better on the other side. And this is separate and apart from whether they even want to stay together or not. We don't try and force things, and we don't predict an outcome. As I mentioned to you offline before too, Leanne, with our own story, when we entered into our reconciliation talk, it really wasn't necessarily to fix the marriage, at least not from my perspective. In our situation, it was to clean things up so that I could make a decision with a clear mind about where I was going next. And emotionally, once the mind is in a state of negative emotions, decision-making becomes very difficult. You don't make good decisions for yourself in that space. And so I knew that. Most people know that. You do things in anger and that you regret later, or, in fear or whatever that you regret later. But one of the main reasons we do the reconciliation, that big section of reconciliation, is to be able to give people clear-mindedness so that they can make solid, good decisions for themselves individually before they even go down the couple's road, but so that they can make good, quality, healthy decisions for themselves going to go forward and decide what they want to go forward with. And then, as Joel mentioned, we go through a whole lot of assessments on their values and their strengths and, their passions and what they want in their future. That's the other part. But
Yeah, to add to Julie's, in a sequence. So once we've done the heavy lifting, we've had the strong emotional talks, people have come to their moments of clarity, then there's a form of reconciliation.
Right.
Then the fun stuff begins, because then we start to begin, what we call engineering a preferable future. And like, for instance, with every couple we work with, we have our own in-house exercise. We call it the Big 8. And the Big 8 is basically define for us your personal definition for words like power, wealth, intimacy, sex. And there's 8 of them. And they're extremely powerful when you have 2 people in a room. And it's interesting that when people come up with these definitions, when we're doing it in this 4-person context, for some people to realize, my gosh, our definitions are so close. And like, we really want the same things, or just the opposite. My definition of power or wealth or sex is very different than yours. How are we going to commit to building a bridge between those 2 definitions?
Yeah, that's huge. Right.
Yes.
And, just defining what someone needs and what that means to them, like that's such clarity. And because they may be saying the same thing, but meaning 2 completely different things. Right. And going back just for a second on the forgiveness, we've had several guests come on with how empowered they felt after they could forgive somebody, even though maybe they were with somebody in an abusive situation or something like that, but finding their own way to forgive and let go and move on with that, it gave them like a whole new life.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I love that. That's that's right up there. That's like what the second thing you do, I think, is work on the forgiveness of each of those issues so that people can move past to get to the other stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big deal. We spend a lot of time doing that. And so no issue is too small. No issue is too big, because we've been in the personal space. We've had it all. But we will methodically and patiently work through it all.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would love to hear, I'm sure you have some really, really interesting success stories or experiences that people have had.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, go ahead.
You want to? Okay.
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I'm just not even sure where to start. There's just so many faces and names flashing behind.
Which we can't use.
Right. We're very careful about being confidential. That's one thing.
Our business is highly confidential.
And our clients really appreciate that. But I certainly can share stories. And most of them are like, please share whatever you need to about us outside of our name so that you can, tell, help anybody else. But one couple in particular I was thinking about is this couple who's just amazing guy, and very, very talented woman. She's an architect and he's a pilot. I can tell you that much. But they just were, had a really fiery dynamic, really contentious dynamic. And a lot of it came from his abusive background. And she just was really strong-willed and determined and very ambitious. And we started working with them, and they were definitely on the verge of divorce, absolutely going to get a divorce. There's no question about it. And she was going to actually check into a center for abused women. Like, that's how bad it was.
Wow.
Never know it by looking at them, because she's stunning and he's handsome, stud of a guy. And they didn't look like the battered and beaten or abuser type. But really, truly what happened was they worked through their issues. Just as we said, we heard them out. We helped them. They had a spiritual background, so we helped them connect more, understand more spiritually in their relationship to their creator and who they were individually, and then understand and resolve each of their issues. And as a result, it was so beautiful, because their preferable future was, really being able to help others. But they also renewed their vows with us, not with us, we didn't do it, but with them present, and ended up having their 3rd child, and are now just a delight. I saw a picture of her on Facebook the other day, and it was just her birthday, and he had put together the most stunning birthday celebration for her and his 3 girls now.
Wow.
3 daughters now. And so it's just, I love hearing and being a part of stories like that. And so obviously it saved an entire family's future in that situation. It saved the couple's future. It saved an enormous amount of money, because it would have been a very expensive divorce. And I mean, and psychologically and emotionally, these 2 individuals.
Yeah.
We also have a couple right now. We have a woman who's married, three very successful kids. Husband owns a company. She's overseas right now getting a certification that she's wanted to get for probably the last 10 years. But 2 years ago, they were on the verge of divorce. And the husband, being very driven, more of an engineer, had a really hard time separating out this idea that, he could be so successful in business and with business people, but be profoundly challenged in his own personal marriage. And so, and again, going back to earlier about the whole idea of mindset shift, and I was even fortunate enough to write a book, Rewired, which is on Amazon. And, I just, in that book, talk about the power of reframing ideas and, but, having to set those ideas properly, in a perspective so that you can change the way you think and then therefore the way you act. But that couple is an absolute success, and they've been really, really, really huge proponents. And then a third couple, then we've got our high-flying, jet-setting entrepreneurs. They're the couple that go, the Burning Man every year. And they are just absolutely lighting it up. They just had their third child actually a month ago. And they're probably some of our biggest evangelists here in Southern California. Yeah. But they too, it's a funny thing with wealth. You tend to create your own rules. The higher you go up in the pyramid of wealth, the easier it is to really create your own rules. And that's, in some ways, that sounds exciting, but in other ways you create, contrivances in marriages and agreements that really on the front end seem exciting, but really come back to destroy you and destroy trust. And so we've worked with some really interesting, super interesting people and have had extraordinary results.
Wow. It sounds like it. I mean, and it also sounds like things are going so well that people are getting pregnant right shortly thereafter. So.
We've had that happen. I'm just working on it, but it's happening over and over and over again. And it's funny because, just to back up about the other couple, it was so sweet. She was told by her therapist to leave him run as far and as fast as you can, get away, when we first started working with them. And this is obviously pre-baby here, but it was, and that's where they were at. And that's the saddest, most heartbreaking thing is when they've been given a death sentence and one of the two parties has been labeled, you're damaged goods, you're abused, you're an abuser, you're a narcissist, you're codependent, you're something like that, something that is a label that puts a ceiling on them. And so that's one of the things that's a pet peeve of mine personally is when people are labeled like that, then they feel like it's a diagnosis and that's all they can do. That's all that there's never going to be any change. And so being able to work with these different couples and break through these diagnoses and let go of these labels and realize, wow, he's not a narcissist. He's an incredibly strong, loyal, amazing man. And this woman is empowered now to stand in her right spot as his queen, as his, the woman that belongs in his life. And now she knows how to be, assertive in the right ways and loving and respectful so that this relationship functions in a right, normal and healthy way. And that's the couple that we're talking about now. That's so incredible that literally 1 week after their third child was born, they invited us to dinner and a concert to celebrate, their first night out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so it gives me goosebumps when I think about the work that we get to do, because it's just transforming families and communities. Because the other thing is when, you deal with divorce all the time, but a lot of times there's a divorce in a situation, it can create a division even in a community. And I don't mean necessarily a geographic community, but in a friendship circle or
absolutely.
A family. So we help keep communities together. We see.
Yeah.
And I want to add one thing to that, Leanne, that Julie touched on, this idea of labels. We're not pompous enough to sit here and think that we're going to overturn, 6 decades of psychological terminology.
No.
We do understand that, there are certain conditions that have certain descriptions. But again, going back to our paradigm of thinking, even the neuroscientific community, has shown us the power of the human mind. One of the most powerful things that you can put in your mind is I am.
Mm-hmm.
I am is one of the most powerful things you can say to yourself on any given day, under any given circumstance, because this is what neuroscience has taught us. And so if you are saying that you are a condition, then sadly enough, you're fulfilling that condition because you were wiring your brain in as such.
Yes.
And so meaning, I could say, I am a child of God that has a problem with X. That's a true statement, right? What I'm saying is, in my identity, I'm a son of God, but I have a challenge in my life. But my identity in this context is I'm a son of God with a challenge. Imagine reversing that, saying I am a fill in the blank, alcoholic. I am whatever. The human mind is so profoundly strong that it like a computer, it must fulfill what you tell it is. And again, I'm not making this is what the neuroscientific community has taught us. And so again, going back to our approach, we're just very careful to steer people away from labeling and steer people more toward what they desire for their future and how do we build it. And of course, along the way, are we going to have tough talks and confront dysfunction? Yes, we will.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. The mind is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
The mind and how we frame our story. Right.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, like, we had touched on it briefly, and I just want to like fill in a little bit of color here. You guys have been married how long? Because you're 30. I'm sorry.
30 years.
30 years. Because you are your biggest success story.
Yeah.
Well,
we like to think so.
Yeah.
Right. Like yeah. you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk.
Yeah.
And so at what point in your marriage was that kind of, oh my, it's either going to make it or break it?
It was right around the 7-year, contrary to cliches, it was right around the 7-year mark that we were, that's it. We were wanting a divorce. We were bitter. We were angry, and we had built it all wrong. It was built on a motto at win at all cost. Yeah. I'll speak for myself. I was selfishly ambitious. I confused being strong with being rigid. I was self-seeking. I didn't have any real great mentors and role models at that time in my life. But we really had to completely tear down, and we use that terminology in our coaching practice. But our marriage was a tear down, meaning, that's what you do with a house when you want something completely new. You don't renovate it. You tear it off the foundation and you build something new. And in our moment of crises, we were able to be guided by other people who we trusted, who we at that time were very confident in their competencies. We were able to find forgiveness, but more excitingly, we were able to rebuild something we wanted all along. We just didn't know how to build it.
Right.
Yeah. And we had 9 years of dating prior and living together prior to even being married. So we had about a 16-year history that we were undoing.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It's a very long time. People feel like you can't teach old dogs new tricks, but as science has taught us, the brain can be rewired.
So yeah, you went through this whole experience, and then since that rewire, how many years have you been together? I'm trying to do math. 23?
No, well, actually, it's 24.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's 24 years in July that we actually went through that process, our own immersive experience that turned our life around.
Wow. That's huge. No wonder so many couples are coming to you.
Yeah. I mean, actually, we fell into this. We really did, because we just, of course, whenever you have some sort of major miracle happen in your own life, which that really was, you can't help but tell people. And plus, everybody around you knows your dynamic. And then when things shift so radically, they're like, what happened to you? If you lost 40 pounds or something, they're like, what happened? How'd you do it? People can't help but ask when we're now in love and we were once so cold and,
yeah. Can you tell me a little bit, like, what was the reaction from the people around you? Like, did they see the change, or did you tell them, or how did that work?
Well, it was really interesting is that right at that time, we made a life decision. After we went through this experience, we made a decision that we were going to give back, right? We had lived for ourselves, And now it was time to give back and help other people, help our community. And so we believed, after going through this experience and seeing the profound change in us, we thought, hey, look, if it can happen for us, it can happen for anybody.
Why not?
And so we trained and went into the Christian ministry and specialized in marriage and family reconciliations.
Yeah.
And that's what we did for 20 years. And we had worked with hundreds of couples, thousands of couples. We were guest speakers all over the world. But we really were able to focus our energies and our work in helping people that were coming to us with different challenges and different degrees of feeling that they were absolutely not able to be rescued. It was too far gone. And that's what we did. And so the reason why I share that story is because we had this profound personal change. And then I left I finished my career as a military officer. Julia was in marketing. We went into the ministry. People were more shocked than happy, I think, because they were like, it was so radical. And that's sometimes when there's so much change in people's lives, the people around us, they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Even though it was positive, they didn't know how to handle it.
And even from before we actually made that career shift too, Leanne, I just wanted to say this, that, because our dynamic was so different, some people heard about it that were far away. Some people experienced it that were closer to us, geographically and physically. But it was really like, could you please show us how did this happen? How did this happen? Well, that's what, perpetuated our possible career changes, because it became obvious that, we have something was a gift here. Something happened. And more people kept asking us, how did you do it? How did you do it? How did you do it? And so we felt compelled, honestly, because we were so untrained at that point. We knew what had happened to us, and that was a big part of it. And that's a big part of our success even today, is we feel what people feel when they're in those situations.
Yeah.
We're not speaking from a textbook, although we have that classical training now, but we are speaking really from the heart. We know what it feels like to be cheated.
Incredible. You guys are doing tremendous work. You really are. And I'm just wondering, for our listeners, they're in different places. Some may be thinking about divorce, some maybe be in the middle of it, and others maybe, way past it. Or, but what would be like your one takeaway to share with them, like if nothing else?
This is a self-serving response, but I really believe it to be true, is when two people are really convinced of something, and in this case, they're hurt, or they just believe that, things need to be very different. You really need to find a third party that you trust, that is not just a good listener, but a third party that has wisdom.
Yeah.
And a third party that can actually respond to what they're hearing in a way that's unbiased and really constructive. I mean, it's easy to be a listener, and that's a great thing, but it's very difficult to find people to actually help you out of what seems to be a situation like for Julie and I. I mean, we really thought it was lost. We really thought there's nothing left here. It's too far gone. We're angry. We're bitter. We're resentful. We don't trust each other. Once trust is damaged, it's incredibly difficult to be restored, but it can happen. It really can happen. And we've walked hundreds of people through that. And in fact, I don't know how much time. I'm guessing we're probably coming close to the end of our talk here. But Julie and I did want to. We were thinking about how can we make a difference? How can we make a contribution? And as I mentioned earlier, Leanne, in the podcast, one of the things that we do is a couple's immersion, and that's anywhere from a day to 2.5 days, depending upon geographically where we're at, where people are at, what they want to get involved in. But we do these highly immersive, highly concentrated experiences with couples. And they range from, I hate you, I don't want to be in the room with you, but my conscience tells me I should try one more time, till the other side of the spectrum, which is, we're kind of bored. And if things don't change, I don't know if this can really, I don't know. I just don't really have a lot of faith in the future of our marriage. But we are willing to open ourselves up to a couple who would like to do an immersive experience here with us in Southern California, in the Los Angeles area. And so what we'd like to do is offer your listeners, at the end, we'll give them our emails, and for them just to tell us their story. As much as their story they're comfortable with about their relationship, and what they would like to see happen in their relationship. And we'd like to handpick a couple and help them in an immersive experience at a rate that would be compared to what we would normally offer, it would be very, very manageable for most any couple.
Wow. What a fantastic offer for somebody.
Yeah.
That's huge, you guys. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. And to our listeners, I would be jumping on this. This is really, really amazing. And what we'll do is if you want to share that email address now, and then I'll also put it in the show notes so that people can find it there in the summary of the podcast and also on our website.
Sure. It's either Joel, Joel, at theperformancegroup.us or Julie at theperformancegroup.us.
Wow. Okay, great. And I wrote that down, so I'll have that as well. And we'll be sharing this week as we talk about this episode of the podcast. You guys are terrific.
Thank you. Thank you.
The immersion is what turned our lives around, which is why we're so passionate about that. That was our wow. It was it spun our heads and opened possibilities and gave us a life back to be able to see forward. And so that's why we really want to offer this at a radically reduced rate for any couple that feels like their story. They want to share their story. They like that opportunity, but you know what? We want to gift a big chunk of it to them so that they can have that chance as well.
Yeah.
So
It's like the difference. Some people like to binge watch their favorite shows over the weekend. Some people want help. They want to come, once a week. They want to go slow. They want to take good notes. They want it to feel right. Other people just want to jump in and either figure out, hey, what do I have here?
Yeah.
Is this a problem that I'm not going to get out from underneath? I mean, can I turn the corner here? I got to get out of this pain. This is for people that they're really tired of being in pain. They're tired of being stuck, and they don't want to wait a couple of months or a couple of weeks. They really want to figure some stuff out quick, and that's what the immersions are designed to do.
And they know the cost if they don't fix this is going to be extraordinary, both emotionally, to their family, psychologically, and financially.
Yeah.
Divorce is expensive. I'm sure we all know that.
And
even splitting up a partnership is very expensive.
Yes, and sometimes we pay for that for years. So this is an extremely generous offer, you guys, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you taking all the time to share what it is that you do, all of the success stories and the couples that you've helped along the way. And, congratulations on your own fantastic relationship. You guys are doing some really good things.
Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you so much.